All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Diana Lizarraga, and I run 8 math, physics, engineering, STEM programs at UC Berkeley, including the NSF LSAMP program for UC Berkeley. I myself was an NSF LSAMP student in the 90s, and it really helped me transform my way of thinking and gave me opportunities to get paid to do research and have a better life. I was a waitress for 9 years, so I'm really excited that now I get to be the director for Berkeley, and have been the director for many years, but also now that I get to connect with folks from Indianapolis, folks from Oklahoma. So thank you again for tuning in today. We're going to take a quick journey about thinking how to create successful strategies related to outstanding statements of purpose. And so in this journey, I'm going to share some information with you from our own LSAMP students. And I hope that if you have questions, you would be most welcome to send them via chat, and we can make sure to get them answered for you. My information for my phone number is there. Feel free to text me. My email's there. I get a lot of emails, so if for some reason you email me and I don't respond right away, please text me at this number, and I'm happy to connect with you. All right. So what I'm kind of thinking about when I was asked this question, what would you share with students about statements of purpose? I think we've got to kind of boil it down to some of the basics. And graduate school applications are complicated. They involve a lot of different things: letters of rec, fellowships, transcripts, the application itself, GRE and subject GRE. But the statement of purpose is something that can be very time consuming and involve a lot of emotional courage for a student to write. So as that is a framework, we're going to look through some of the pieces of a statement of purpose and really try to provide information that could be useful if you're continuing the journey of finishing up a statement of purpose, or if you're just starting the process of creating a statement of purpose, or if you're thinking that you will need to create a statement of purpose at some point in your future. So I'll share a little bit about me. We'll talk a little bit about the goals of a statement of purpose, how that relates to your story. What are some of the key elements that would be helpful to have? Successful strategy. Throughout this workshop, I use SOP, which stands for Statement of Purpose, a lot. But there's also something out there called Personal History Statement. So I wanted to make sure to explain the differences between the two. We'll also highlight some do's and don'ts. We'll talk about the match. And when we say match, that means between you as an individual and the campus that you're applying to. Why does that department make sense for you? And we'll also share some examples along the way. So the LSAMP community to me is important. The picture down below, there's 3 pictures there, that it was taken last week, and this is some of your sister LSAMP students at UC Berkeley. And I thought it was important to kind of share an image of all of those amazing students, because they're also interested in going to some of your campuses for graduate school. To the right on the top, that's a picture of me, and to the left, that's part of our Native American Staff Council and some of the women directors at UC Berkeley. So when we talk about community, I'm not just talking about me, myself, as an LSAMP student. And by the way, I married an LSAMP student. His name's Jaime. We have a little baby. Actually, he's 9 now, but I always laugh because, there's a lot that happened for me related to LSAMP, and not that I'm encouraging you to, follow my footsteps in that regard, but the community is strong, and I was really excited that I was selected for that program when I was an undergraduate, and it was really important for me to utilize those resources. So I just wanted to say thank you for spending your time with me today and utilizing these resources on how to create a really wonderful statement of purpose, and think about your communities that you're working with as you go through this. So the goals for today are really, how do we talk about a statement of purpose that highlights your preparation and your experiences, incorporates your motivation for your field of study, and produces a concise, prompt, specific, polished document. We're talking about a 2-page document, and that takes a lot of energy to be concise and to get all the information about you in 2 pages. And so I don't want you to do this alone. I really want you to think through who could help you with that. I know that Farah's online right now with us from Oklahoma LSAMP, and she works with her students to guide them on writing the statement of purpose. But who else might be able to do that besides your LSAMP staff members and directors and faculty? There might be advisors in your major. There might be graduate students in your lab. There might be people from educational opportunity programs or other types of programs that might be able to give you some guidance. The graduate division usually is very open to talking with students about polishing up their statement of purpose. Some specific faculty might be good to approach. And there might be other students that are applying just like you that have similar goals or who have just applied and can help mentor and coach you with some insight. And so I come from a place of appreciation because some of the stories that I'm going to share with you today were graciously given to me by some of the students that I work with at UC Berkeley. And what I love about them is they are always thinking of others and they're always wanting to help others. So this is their way to connect with all of you, even though you don't get to meet them personally. Their stories are valuable and important, and I'm glad I'll get a chance to share some of their knowledge and some of their information from their statements of purpose to help provide opportunities for others. So teamwork, very important. Don't try to take on the statement of purpose by yourself. And when it boils down to things, we're thinking about, your story and your communication. When I put up the slide, if I were to ask all of you, how many of you could recognize 10 of the icons on this slide? If you do recognize 10 icons, go ahead and type yes in the chat box. All right, how many of you would recognize 15 of these icons on this slide? Not many, okay. So as we go through it from the top one, going from left to right, I'm going to go through them, and I'm going to make a point about symbols. In today's society, the college students right now are typically in the millennium generation, and they are hyper-connected. And so they're very symbols-based. So when we look at these symbols, we can start off on the top left, Adobe. The next one is iClickers. The next one is texting, words with friends. The blue circle image is Prezi, which is a presentation software. Then on the second row, we've got Vine, Apple FaceTime, LinkedIn. We've got iTunes, YouTube. On the third row, with the P in the red circle, we've got Pinterest, Skype. The W is Wufoo, and that's an online, it's related to SurveyMonkey, an online web form builder. TED, Google Circles. As we go through all of these things from the last line, from apps to Evernote to Instagram to Snapchat to the weather, people, wow, Jade, you got 12? That's great. People are very symbols-based now. But one of the challenges is, for the statement of purpose, is you're not going to be able to include 12, 15 symbols and say, this represents me, right? We don't talk in the way that we talk with email. We can't put in your personal statement, hi, it's great to see you. Looking forward to getting into your graduate program, comma, kind regards, comma, Farah, right? We can't do that. So we have to really be thoughtful on how we're putting the pieces of information together. Though we might think in symbols and generation, the millennium generation is very symbol-based, we need to be able to use some of those symbols, translate them into words that represent us, and put that in a concise, clear package so that faculty who read the statement of purpose can really understand who you are. And so we need to be thoughtful about that process. It's your story. So we need to demonstrate your promise for success. And that often involves things like intellectual growth, scientific maturity, weaving in your personal journey that relates to your academic and professional goals, but also talking about your community. And understanding fundamentally that the people that are going to be reading these statements of purpose are primarily going to be faculty. And so that is your audience. You're gearing the statement of purpose for faculty eyes and the program goals that are within that university. Now, I wanted to share a story about Jessica. So this is one of our NSF LSAMP Bridge to the Doctorate students, Jessica. She's an integrative biology, third-year PhD student, and she's bilingual. She's from Puerto Rico. So for those of you out there who have English as a second language, that sometimes can be an additional layer of responsibility for you to have to think about your personal statement if you're applying to English schools in the United States, for example, to make sure you're using the right words to demonstrate your experiences and your academic enrichment activities. So if that's the case, then you need to make sure that you are getting great insight on feedback, but in particularly grammar, just to make sure that things are showcasing yourself in the right light. And Jessica worked really hard and did a great job on her statement of purpose to do that because Spanish was her first language. This is Ebuka, and Ebuka is a geophysics PhD student. He's also an LSAMP student from UC Davis, which is where I went to school as an undergraduate. And I wanted to put his picture there because what I love about Ebuka is that Ebuka is always able to showcase who he is. He's able to do that elevator pitch, talk about what he's doing in such a meaningful manner. And so your statement of purpose is very much like that. You need to have a great first paragraph. Remember, students are going to be reading statements of purpose examples online and from other resources. But what's important is that you have your story shaped in the way that makes sense for you and that is authentic to yourself. And so having that great first paragraph so that when faculty are reading this, they get excited about that first paragraph and they want to read more, right? You're creating this academic biography, this journey, this story about yourself, and you're weaving in there what it is you want to do ultimately down the road. 10 years from now? Is it a faculty position? Is it an industry position? And this is the strongest example of your writing. You need this to be flawless. So you need to work hard to make sure that people are able to not only understand your academic journey, but realize that you have the skill set. You have writing skill sets that would be very helpful for them to have a student with such strong writing skill sets. So I want you to think about that as you think about the essay that you're going to write. Now, everybody has to write one, and there may be different takes on statements of purpose depending on which campus or which university you're applying to. More than likely, they will be similar, but you're going to have to be careful to not recycle all of the statements of purpose exactly the same. You're going to need a little bit of customization. So anyhow, when I think of key elements, I want you to think about these options right here. The great first paragraph, the biography, meaningful examples that are really demonstrating your skill set, and making sure that this is the best paper you ever wrote, especially since it's about you. And I know you can do it. So I'm going to have a few examples from some of our LSAMP students that I wanted to share with you. This is Kene, and Kene is actually Ebuka's cousin. So it's great to have both of them at Berkeley. He's a third-year PhD student in EECS, what we call EECS, which is Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. And remember, the goals of a statement of purpose are highlight your preparation and experiences, incorporate your motivation for your particular field of study, and to produce the best document ever that's prompt specific and polished. So I wanted to highlight a couple of sentences from Kene's statement of purpose. And it's in these colored text. It says, a project modeling the hybrid system of a bouncing ball with a circuit consisting of op amps, resistors, capacitors, and switches. The other element I wanted to highlight is this other sentence that says, the analysis itself employed a number of mathematical techniques including logic, differential equations, and Laplace transforms. So those two pieces I thought were a really good way of explaining his experiences and his preparation. You don't want to have your explanations be so wordy. You want them to be concise. And you want them to start to think about you in a scientific way. He's talking, obviously, about computer science elements, but I love how he wove in the mathematical element in there to also demonstrate that he has some depth. And those are the types of things that you need to think about as you are preparing to polish up your statement of purpose or help students with their statements of purpose. And again, if you have questions as we're going through, I would welcome them. Just feel free to type them out. So what are some of the strategies to help you be successful? One of the biggest gifts you can give yourself or help students understand is the gift of time. Start early. Prioritize all the deadlines of the graduate programs, because you'll see once you apply to certain programs, some are due in the beginning of December, some may be due at the end of December, some might be due in early January. And so you want to make sure that you're working on the ones that need to be done first, prioritizing those ones. In a perfect world, you would give yourself at least 1 month. But I know everybody's juggling schedules and you might not have that time frame. But if you can, it would be to your benefit. The other thing I would mention is learn how to manage your edits. I've known many students, and Farah, you might know this situation as well. When one student has their statement of purpose completed, a good draft, and they send it to 10 different people for review. All 10 people give useful and helpful feedback for that particular student, but the student didn't manage the edits, and so because they didn't manage the edits, they're not really sure which document they should use. Was it the first draft, the final draft? And so you need to be really understanding of how to make sure you're tracking all of those changes and what the document name is and if there's a date stamp on it to help you be successful. Because sometimes you've made edits and this is really amazing. It's evolved to this really amazing place. And then you've made a second edit and you've erased all the new edits that you just made. That happens a lot. So be very careful on how you're obtaining the feedback and when you're managing your edits. The other thing is you want to break down the instructions, right? And different schools are going to have different prompts, so they might be similar. So it's completely okay to make an Excel file, to put your links in there for that particular graduate school application link, and to copy and paste the prompts and the instructions in there just to make sure that you are keeping everything straight. Because often I see students working on statements of purpose when they're traveling on a bus to go home or in between classes. They might have Wi-Fi connection, they might not. So having an Excel file that helps you keep track of some of that information can be helpful so that you can utilize your time to the best of your advantage. This second part of the slide, which talks about, preparing materials to help showcase your experiences, this is sort of a checklist, and I made that intentionally because I wanted to give all of you the opportunity to look at some of these things and say, oh, that might apply to me, and perhaps I wasn't thinking about that before. Whether it's lab or research, or whether it's a language or community that you're visiting, or maybe applicable unique skill sets. Maybe you've done some machine shop training and you weren't thinking about mentioning that, but I would suggest that you do because it shows that you have a lot of depth in that area and have got a good skill set. If you're, for example, a Gates Millennium Scholar, that would be very important to mention because often Gates Millennium Scholars, from my understanding, have funding for graduate school as well. So all of these little things are pieces of the puzzle that make up who you are, and your goal is to try to figure out what is the right way to be concise and clear while I weave this great story about myself, but highlighting these important experiences. And you don't just want to give examples, you want to give examples that help highlight your skill set So an example that might not be too strong is, oh, I took the physics machine shop. A better example would be, I learned through the physics machine shop certificate program how to use the lathe and the drill, and I produced a tool. It was a 30-hour program or something like that. Be able to contextualize it. Oh, I see we got a question. Farah says Excel can also help you organize your program search, the pros and cons of the programs in which you're interested. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Keeping track of all that information is complicated. So I used to tell my students, and now I tell them to start a little bit earlier, but I say, make an Excel file and start thinking about 2 programs every month, and do that a year in advance if you can. And that way, by the time that you're applying, you really have a solid list of programs that you might be able to consider. And then you can drill down from that point. So thank you, Farah. I also want you to think about the example of this prompt right here from UC Berkeley. Carefully read the instructions. So this is what UC Berkeley had. So if you're thinking about applying to UC Berkeley, this is the prompt that you would be given last year. And according to the graduate division, it sounds like it'll probably be the prompt for this coming year as well, fall 2015. Please describe your aptitude and motivation for graduate study and your area of specialization, including your preparation for this field of study, your academic plans, or your research interest in your chosen area of study, and your future career goals. Be specific about why UC Berkeley would be a good intellectual fit for you. So that part right there, why it would be a good fit for you, that's what we call typically the match. The matching statement. Why are you going to be a good fit for Berkeley, and why is Berkeley going to be a good fit for you? The other element that I will mention, and I put it on here, is it says make sure to check on the appropriate department admissions website to find out if your statement should include additional or more specific information. A lot of students don't take the time to do that, but you should do that for every application you apply to, just to be safe. Okay? So as we kind of think about that, UC Berkeley's take on this from the graduate division is, how do you break this down? And their suggestion is to break this down into 4 steps. And the first one focuses on your statement of purpose in terms of interest and motivation. And this first step right here, you're not going to have a lot of text related to that. It might be a couple of sentences. Okay? What was that aha moment that sparked your interest in physics or in engineering or in cancer research? And as we break that down related to the prompt that we were just given on the previous slide, that addresses your aptitude and motivation for grad study and your area of specialization, right? If you're going to say you're interested in math, you need to drill down and really talk about maybe you're an applied mathematician really interested in calculating the blood flow of a particular animal or something like that, right? What is it exactly you're interested in doing? How are you prepared for this field of study? If I were to ask out there, for those that are here, how much money do you think it costs a faculty person to have a grad student? Do you think it costs more than $50,000 for a PhD student? Anybody? Yep. Way more, John says. Yep. The guest, oh, I don't know your name, guest, but yes, if you include benefits and tuition, all of those things, it's way more than $50,000. Typically right now, we're looking at over $100,000, typically about $125,000 investment that faculty member, department, campus is making for each PhD student that they're bringing. And that depends on the cost of living, of course. But for Berkeley, we're looking at about $125,000 in state. If it's out of state, you're probably at an additional $10,000. So these are expensive decisions that they're making. And so that's why your personal statement is so important. And so that second step that they talk about is, what is your preparation for this field of study? You need to summarize your undergraduate career, or if you have a master's degree and you're applying to a PhD program, for example, then you need to highlight that information for your graduate career as a master's student, for example, and help them. Don't just tell them, but use the meaningful examples to discuss the relevance of your recent and current activities. Meaningful examples. I keep using that word over and over and over again. Meaningful examples related to achievement statements. You just don't want to say, oh, I attended this conference. You can say, I fundraised $3,000 to attend this conference where I presented my work on this atom trapper, and it resulted in me winning an award for my work, right? Can you contextualize it? Can you provide them with information that will help them get a really clear picture of you? Because they're on the other end, the faculty are trying to decide, is this student a good investment for us? And so you want to be able to answer all their questions and say, yes, I am, right? So the fourth step that they mention is elaborate on your academic research interests and the match and career goals, right? So you want to make sure to help them understand what's the ultimate picture. Is the ultimate picture for you working in industry, becoming a professor? Are you still trying to map that out? Help them understand what that end goal is and help them understand what your research interest is. I have one student, his name was Eddie, and he is an LSAMP student as well. He got his undergraduate degree at Berkeley in physics. He married another student in our program named Griselda. She was mechanical engineering, he was physics. And he was a transfer student, very thoughtful, very, very kind. And they actually came in married, so they knew each other before they came to Cal. And what a wonderful couple. Everybody thought, well, sure, Eddie's going to go on to graduate school and he's going to go in physics. But no, his passion was actually material science and using physics to analyze and look at problems in material science. And so now he is a PhD student at UC Berkeley in material science. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention is that if you're applying to the same campus where you got your undergraduate degree, it might be good to talk to the department or the graduate division to ask, do you have any numbers around how many students typically get accepted from their own home campus for graduate school? For UC Berkeley, for example, one of the deans, former deans of graduate division at UC Berkeley told me, we accept 10% of UC Berkeley students. But for example, in some departments like physics, they typically don't like to accept more than 4% of their own students. So it might be department specific. And that might help you decide, do you really want to do that? Or do you want to expand your world and try a different campus? So again, this slide I wanted to give you because from UC Berkeley's take, these are the four steps that they feel are really important for statement of purpose. And since I'm from Berkeley, I wanted to make sure I included a little bit of that. All right, moving on to our next slide. This right here is Mary Bell, and Mary Bell is a mechanical engineer at UC Berkeley. She got her undergraduate degree at UC Irvine, and she spent the summer with me a few years back, and then she decided to apply to Berkeley, so I was able to help her and was really excited about her application. One of the things that I thought she did really well is she talks about the energy crisis, and she says, the energy crisis inspired me to develop more economical solar cells that will make solar technology more practical for the general community, thus helping reduce the usage of fossil fuels. I became a research assistant in Dr. Farghali's lab, Farghali Mohammed's research laboratory, in order to develop a better understanding of materials. So she's a mechanical engineer, but she wanted to get a better understanding of materials, so she has some depth. And this is her first paragraph in her statement of purpose. And I wanted to just mention her first line. In my hometown of Coachella, California, summer temperatures can reach 120 degrees, forcing many homes to use large amounts of electrical engineering for air conditioning, right? So she was able to weave in her own community into that first paragraph. And anybody who reads that is going to be like, wow, that's really interesting. 120 degrees, you don't typically see that, right? So well done, Mary Bell. She's now working on really cool projects at Berkeley, having a great time. She's involved with our Latino graduate student club, and she allowed me to share this picture. We have a selfie contest with our students As I mentioned, LSAMP is one of 8 programs that I run, and the umbrella name is Cal Nerds. So this is one of our nerdy selfie contest winners. And she did a really good job about incorporating her motivation for this particular field of study. So this is one example that I think would be helpful as you decide what the next step is for you. Oh, and this is a picture of Eddie, actually. That's the physics student who is now a material science engineering student at Berkeley. I also wanted to mention 2 different things. What is the personal history statement, and what is the statement of purpose? These are 2 different essays. Some programs may only want the statement of purpose, which is why, why is graduate school the next logical step for you, your academic journey? Why does that make sense for you? Now, the personal history statement is something different. It kind of talks about your obstacles, and you want to be able to demonstrate your perseverance and end on a positive note. Often, the personal history statement, which some schools call the diversity statement, is used with fellowship discussions. And so once you get accepted into graduate school, often fellowship discussions are happening simultaneously and ongoing because all programs are supposed to let students know if you're accepted by March 15th. And then decisions are hopefully made by the middle of March or middle of April or end of April from the student side to decide where they're going. But as all of that is going through, there's these conversations about funding and money and how to help you finance your graduate school education. And so this personal history statement is a separate item than your statement of purpose. And so I just wanted to have a slide so you could make sure to understand these 2 differences. The other thing is sometimes you'll weave in some of the items from your statement of purpose into your personal history statement. But again, 2 different things. Personal history statement, aka diversity statement, often is explaining some of the challenges and how you rose above those obstacles and how you're excited about graduate school, but it often will showcase more information about you, your community, things of that nature. So this is Lacey, and Lacey is in endocrinology, and she did her undergrad at Rochester IT. She was an LSAMP student there. And what I like about her paragraph right here is this part about where she talked about providing specific examples about her experience in Brazil. So as you read this, I additionally researched abroad in São Paulo, Brazil. In this lab, I investigated the influence of a viral-induced model of Alzheimer's disease. Using this model, we were able to specifically target and impair cerebral insulin receptors, thus impairing glucose metabolism in the brain, while assisting in the surgical procedures of the animals and executing immunoassay experiments. She also finishes up by saying, I also learned how to assimilate into the Brazilian culture while simultaneously acquiring an appreciation for the Portuguese language. Right? That's a very specific example that showcases a lot about her. She's willing to go out of the country, learn more about a culture. She's also got experience working with animals and doing surgical procedures. It's a very well thought out few sentences. So it's very good for you to see these kinds of examples so you can decide how you can start structuring your sentences to showcase your particular achievements in the way that makes sense for you, but also in the way that faculty are excited to see. All right, so we're going to do some do's and don'ts real quick. So this one right here is one of our students her name's Diana. She just got accepted to graduate school. We had 14 students from our NERDS program who got accepted into graduate school for this coming fall, and Deanna's one of them, and she's a mathematician at Berkeley, and she's going to Mills College in the fall, and she got accepted. She was deciding between UCLA and Mills College, and it was such a hard decision. But one of the reasons she was able to be in a position like that is because she had an excellent statement of purpose, and she was always polishing it. We have a graduate school coach that works with some of our students as well, who is an experienced director from the School of Engineering with over 30 years experience. And so we layer my advising and support, her advising and support, faculty interest and their support, you know, along with the other team members that they've picked out for their particular journey. And what I thought was good about her is that Deanna really had a continuity and flow. It wasn't choppy. Her statement of purpose was really well written. It ended on a positive note, explaining that she is ready for that next step. And it was written in an active voice. It's not one of those things where saying, this is what I did, I've done, you know, in past tense all the time. It was written that I'm excited to be involved in this project and here are the skill sets that I was able to achieve. So you really want to think about writing in an active voice. But you also want to think about some things to avoid. And that can be things like always starting a sentence with I. That's one of the first things I do when I go through statements of purpose, is I circle all the I's there. And typically students will have 5 to 10 I statements in there. And we need to shift away from that because it doesn't suggest strong writing. We also need to be careful with using doubles and triples. And that means if you're using the same word over and over, maybe 3 times, in terms of like opportunities or diversity, you want to go and grab a dictionary and use the thesaurus, to really branch out on your language so that you can use the right words so that they could be excited about the story you're weaving instead of noticing, wow, she keeps using the same word over and over and over. And you're more dynamic than that. I know you can do it. So I want you to start thinking about what are the right words that will represent you. Also, one of the no-nos is when you lack consistency. One of the examples I see when I'm working with my students is I'll see them use, I am an undergraduate at UC Berkeley. And then a paragraph later it says, when I took this UCB course, and then another paragraph later says, I'm looking forward to graduating with my degree from the University of California, Berkeley. And then in the last paragraph it says Cal. So all of those 4 names do represent UC Berkeley, but you need to, it would be good for a student to just pick one. UC Berkeley, for example, and be consistent throughout. The other thing that we see students do is sometimes they'll use PhD, but they'll use it with and without the period. So whatever you decide makes sense for you, whether it's an MS degree or a PhD degree, if you're going to use that throughout your statement of purpose, make sure that you have decided on whether to use periods or not use periods with that acronym. The other thing, which I think a lot of people already know, is be very careful not to go over the word or the page limit. Typically, you're looking at a 2-page document or less. Some students are able to do it. Lacey, that one student I mentioned in endocrinology, her statement of purpose was 1 page. But other people like to have the 2 pages, so that's completely fine. This right here is Karina, and Karina is from Guatemala. And I highlighted a few things in her statement because I wanted to show you how she used water quality and her community to explain why this makes sense for her. So she says, my passion for studying water quality originates from growing up in a developing country, Guatemala, and experiencing firsthand how challenging your day can be while only having 4 hours of water a day and while having a potential for becoming sick from a waterborne disease, right? That really helps highlight her motivation for this field of study. And as she explains in that second paragraph, the mechanisms of mercury, and as she goes through planktonic cultures of sulfate reducing bacteria, at a contaminated site in Bangladesh, beach water quality, fecal source identification, and another word that I highlighted at the end, researcher and professor. Those, again, are some of the goals in your statement of purpose, is to be able to showcase your preparation, your experiences, what your career trajectory is going to be. So well done to Karina, who is really thoughtful about that. And this is a picture of Karina. She's a third-year grad student, and this is one of her research posters that she attended a conference last fall. And so when you're a grad student, you're also doing research posters just like you are as an undergraduate. She did her undergraduate work at UCLA. I mentioned before talking about the match, and that's the campus intellectual fit. And I wanted to give some examples from some of the students that applied to graduate school from our programs, and to provide those examples to you about how do you write something like that. What happens if you only have one person that you're really interested in at a particular school, like Harvard, for example? You're going to have to be careful on how you navigate that, because if that one person goes on sabbatical, or if they decide to transition to another university and you're not following them closely enough to understand that there's going to be some shifting with that particular professor, they could automatically say, you know what, this student only wants this professor is not going to be here in the fall, just automatically give it a no. And so it's important when you're looking at campus intellectual fit that you really look at the program and the people in there. But if you can, I would try to highlight at least 2 people, if not more, that you could be interested in. And as Farah mentioned, when you have an Excel file and you help organize all of that content, you can also put in there the different faculty that you might be interested in. And so for her, this one student right here, she mentions, Dr. Lincoln Law's research interests me because this laboratory focuses on developing new catalysts for nanowire growth for applications in photovoltaics. I'm also interested in Dr. Robert Chang's research because he focuses on developing efficient solar cells. So those things are important to showcase. This other one is another example from an application that's going to CU Boulder. And this student, her name is Magali. She's another NSF LSAMP student. And Magali did her undergraduate at Berkeley and then went on to get a master's, and now she is going to University of Colorado at Boulder, and she's in geophysics. But how she talks about this one particular area is really important. It says, continue using INSAR to study earthquakes under Christy Campio. CU Boulder's geologic setting, faculty, and resources provide a unique opportunity to integrate my research interests of using INSAR data and seismic data to study injection-induced earthquakes. So here she's kind of only mentioned one particular person that she wants to work with, but she's also said this type of technology. So if you are going to do one particular person, make sure to contextualize that and explain a technology or an area of research that could be applicable to more than one faculty, even though you've only identified one particular faculty. I wanted also to mention another one. This is kind of a more general approach related to the match. And this one is talking about, I like the opening sentence, my mindset is not on one particular research topic, but rather I'm drawn to the variety of research topics in the SIR group is investigating. And it ends at the very end of that paragraph. Given these and other work being done, I'm certain I will find a home in one of these labs. So the student mentions a couple different mentors, but gosh, what a smart way to navigate that paragraph. And so well done. The student is actually at Berkeley getting their PhD, an LSAMP student. So it was really well done. Right? So we're getting ready to wrap up. But before we wrap up, I thought it was important to tell you that sometimes in your statement of purpose, in being your authentic self, you're going to come across some challenges that you feel compelled to write about. And what does that look like for you? It might be a disability. It might be a couple of grades that you didn't do well in, and you want to explain that. And so should you want to, you can. And what I will say about that for me, gosh, I went through chemotherapy in 2010, and I've had, what, 6, 7 surgeries? I lost count, to be honest. And so for me, managing a disability is part of who I am. And that is part of my journey and my story. If I were to use that in a personal statement or a personal history statement talking about overcoming challenges, that would be one thing. But perhaps I want to also weave that into my statement of purpose, explaining to them that yes, I'm managing this disability and I'm able to have great success in managing it. And here are some of the important elements related to the area that I want to go into and how this might possibly be connected in some way, right? If you've gone through a life experience of some sort that has been a real challenge for you, whether you've had to take time off from school or didn't get the grades that you want, it's okay. It's okay to include that in there. But what would not be okay is to make that the focus of your statement of purpose. You would just weave in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 sentences about that, and then you would move on. All right? But you need to be comfortable with what you're going to put in there, because I really want you to own your own sound bite. And the other thing you can think of is you can think about your LinkedIn page. If you don't have a LinkedIn page, a lot of folks are moving into that space, and it might be good to have that LinkedIn page and put up your resume, put up a JPEG of your poster or your research abstract or a research paper, so that they can use that information as they're reading your application and your statement of purpose. Kaplan did a study in 2012, and in 2012 Kaplan found out that 33% of graduate school administration staff were looking at social media to learn more about their applicants. Now, some programs don't allow that. Some campuses have policies where you're not allowed to go and look at social media for the applicants that you have, but some are. And if it was 33% in 2012, and now we're in 2015, I can only imagine what that might mean. And Farrah's chiming in and saying, same with GPA. If your core GPA is better than your overall GPA, then that is where you can talk about your strengths. And I think that's fine to include that in there. For me, when my STEM GPA was much stronger than my overall GPA. I was taking these other classes that I really didn't want to take, but that I had to take. And so for some of them, I kind of put pass, no pass. And when I passed them, it wasn't really that exciting. It wasn't really showing any depth about me. So make sure you're able to frame that in the right way. And that's where you can really have your team, the group of people that are helping you move forward with your graduate school application, give you some insight. You might write down what you really feel about that particular element. Maybe it's a bad grade, a bad GPA, taking time off, and ask the people that you're working with to read that, and how can you make it more concise? Are there any loaded words in there that you need to take out? Are you blaming somebody in those sentences, and do you need to take that out? So you really need to be thoughtful, and your letter writers, who you will often give a copy of your statement of purpose to, whether it's in draft form or final form, will appreciate your willingness to address some of this information, because they might be able to parallel a comment or two in their letter of recommendation because you had the emotional courage to include it in your statement of purpose. And you can even work with your letter writers to expand what they might say in their letters on a particular subject, or contextualize it even further. So think about that, because when you think about the statement of purpose, faculty are going to see it. But you know who else might see it? Committees on fellowships, graduate division, administrators, departmental staff that are organizing files, things like that. So be very thoughtful in how you write that element into your statement of purpose, and understand that that might be something that other people beyond the faculty might read, and you need to be comfortable with that. Don't put anything in there that you wouldn't feel comfortable with. Okay? All right. Thanks, Farrah. I appreciate that. All right. As we review everything and wrapping up, remember, your audience are faculty. So I put hashtag faculty eyes. They're going to be on you, right? They're going to be looking at that paper, understanding who is this person, and you only have really 2 pages to do that with. This is a picture of Pablo, and Pablo is Dr. Pablo Garcia, came to Cal in chemistry, ended up finishing up his PhD. His mentor was at UC San Diego, and he was studying ocean chemistry, and then she left and went to Urbana-Champaign, and Pablo actually went ahead and went with his mentor from UC San Diego out of state. And they were a great fit. And the reason that he decided to do that is because when he was writing his statement of purpose, he wrote a great statement of purpose about the match, about the faculty and the connection. And when that faculty member got the opportunity to take a promotion at a different campus, He decided, you know what, I can either finish here in chemistry at UC San Diego, or I can go and finish my PhD with this faculty person at another campus, and he chose to do that. So this statement of purpose sometimes is an introduction to a relationship that will not only, you know, guide you for the next few years, but can also change your life literally by having you move from one place to another and opening worlds of new possibilities for your career. Make sure you have time. Collect the different materials. That was that checklist that I talked about. It's always important to have a positive tone in your statement of purpose. And, you know, I know I've said this before, but polish your work. You're always polishing it. It's very common for statements of purpose to have 10 to 20 drafts before you've arrived at the final one. When I work with students on posters, I always tell them, you know, there's the poster that you wanted to give, the one you should have given, and the one you gave. It's the same with statement of purpose. There's always more you could have added or edited in the one you really wanted to do. But think through your versions and which version is going to which campus, and make sure that they are polished in the way that feels good to you, because this is your best piece of work. Make sure that you're using the right words and avoid doubles and multiples and using I. Develop a strong match, and really, if you can, really emphasize an amazing first paragraph that's interesting. Be okay with yourself if you're going to include challenges. Everybody has challenges, and that's what makes us unique and special and interesting. And so how did you overcome that challenge? How did that challenge add to who you are? Those are important things to know, because people are interested, right? You're more than just a grad student. You're a human being that adds value to the scientific community. And that's important. That's important to showcase. So I wanted to lastly mention that you can download this slide set at the website that John, who is helping us with technology today, has already sent you. But you can also download it. I loaded it up this morning on our NERDS website. I'm actually going to be spending some time this summer revamping our NERDS website, so it's not a very fancy website right now, but it'll evolve to be a little bit more special. But the slide set's there should you want it. And I'm on LinkedIn, and if you would love to connect, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, but make sure to type something in there like, I attended your webinar, so that I can add you, because normally I won't add somebody that I'm not really connected to. We're on Twitter at CalNerds, and really excited about the opportunity for all of you to use this information to help showcase your amazing talents, so that you can move forward and become the scientist of your dreams or the engineer of your dreams. So I really thank you so much for your time, and I really want to come from a place of appreciation for all of the students and nerds that I work with who were so kind to share their images, their pictures, their words, and their stories. And I hope that someday down the road, if you feel comfortable, that you'll take some time to share some of your information in that way, because there's always another nerd out there that could use a little bit of help and support and encouragement. So thank you. Thank you. Guess I don't have your name, but I will say thank you. And if there's any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to have them. So, oh, John put out there, questions, anyone? You're welcome, Jay. Thank you so much for coming today. Okay, looks like we're having a question coming in. 1 second. Oh, it says great job. Aw, that's really, thanks, Farah. I appreciate that. All right, guest says, what is the maximum amount of time to ask students to start on a statement? I would say at the minimum to have a thoughtful statement is probably 1 month. I've known students to crank it out in 3 days, but those statements weren't very thoughtful. They didn't really, it was very chunky. It wasn't, the flow wasn't really good. And so you don't want a chunky kind of mismatched personal statement or statement of purpose. So if you have time, at least a month. If you have more time, if you're applying this fall, I would start coming up with at least the first paragraph. The first paragraph seems to be, once you get that first paragraph down, it seems to go much easier. And so this slide set I tried to create so that students could use that little checklist, could look at what Berkeley would do and break it down into 4 steps, and what to include in there and why those things are important. So in a perfect world, I would say 1 month at the minimum. In a perfect world, if you could, I would say 6 months, so that you can do these micro contributions to your statement of purpose every month and keep polishing it up. Because the other thing that you must think about, it's not so much that you can't write a document about yourself, right? I think we could all write a 2-page document about ourselves in a day, but it's the editing. The editing is what elevates your statement of purpose to good to great. And when faculty members are reading that, they can tell who has taken the time to edit their statements of purpose because they're so elevated. It's hard not to see the talent in those words that they specifically chose, in the rhythm of that statement of purpose. So thank you, Gus, for your question. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. I hope that if anybody is going to ever visit Cal or have students that are coming to Cal, that you'll let me know, as I'd be happy to learn more about that. And I also wanted to take a moment to thank John. John is the technology person who made today possible by helping me get our slides set up, making sure the microphone was working, and I really just wanted to say thank you to him. All right, everybody. Oh, wait, Jade's typing something, so I just want to check and see if it's a question. Oh, look at that timing. It's almost right about 1 o'clock. Thank you, Jade. I appreciate that.